had a question.
Oh, hi. Is this on? Okay. Yeah,
Can
Alex.
I just say, I want you all to talk to each other, too. Don't just talk to me. Go ahead.
Alex Williams, Podcast Hotel. It seems to me that there's been a real war going on with language. And what we're seeing, for instance, is Republicans using the language very well to get what they want and going out into the communities and using that language very effectively. And there's some undermining aspects to how they're using that language. I'm curious about how...
Could you give me an example of what you're thinking about?
Well, I mean, terrorism is a word that can be used, for instance, to spy on people by looking at their data, looking at their internet traffic, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good example. That's a very good example. And the Patriot Act. That's even better. Yeah.
So my question is, what are
Don't think of an elephant. Reframing is the concept.
very- Right.
And the Republicans are masters of it.
Yeah, they're very good at it. You're exactly right. Lakoff's book is very good, too, by the way.
So what are progressives like yourself, or or even politicians who you align yourself with, are doing to try to change that language? Because you can go up there and say, I'm bold, I'm courageous, whatever it may be, but if the folks on the other side of the aisle are using the language as saying terrorism, freedom, and even like phrases like net neutrality are really pretty pathetic. I mean, what does it mean? It's really hard to define what network neutrality really is. So how are you guys trying to change the language and then going out into the communities so you can really look out for people like us?
Well, first of all, I would not claim that I'm any kind of expert on this. I think there are people who let me share my personal bias about this. I have a concern myself about too much energy being spent on strategy and not enough energy being spent on doing the right thing. I think that you're right. There's no question about it. Language does matter, and the death tax, the Patriot Act, these are all, which I've thought of those things, are all great examples of the kind of things that they do. And there are people in our party who do the same thing. I don't think that's my job. I mean, my job is to figure out where the country needs to go and how we need to get there. I mean, there are plenty of people who spend their lives trying to figure out how, the exact language that you're supposed to use to frame things. I don't. I mean, I spend most of my time trying to figure out the problems that I think the country's faced with here and around the world and what we ought to do. So, I mean, it's a very important question because without winning, you can't govern. And it's very difficult to win if they're winning the language fight, which is really what you're saying. So it's not that I don't think it matters. It's just that that's not what I spend most of my time doing. I mean, my own view is that I'll give you an example. You're talking about the bigger sort of national debate that takes place in the Congress and across the country. I think that presidential elections, which is what I've been involved in for the last few years, are very different than that. I don't think they're driven by that kind of language. I think presidential elections, because there's such a clear choice, it's one candidate and another, usually it's just two people. And historically it's been men, but obviously it's going to be women too in the future. So a man or a woman who's running for president. And I don't think those elections are decided by issues. I mean, I think the issues matter. Everybody cares about them. But I think they're largely about integrity and character and leadership. It's why the comment that was made earlier is dead on. It's why the non-politician, somebody that doesn't sound like a politician, will stand out like a neon light in that incredibly intense national spotlight. But most people, presidential elections, you have partisans on both sides. They know who they're going to vote for. And then you have the people who actually decide the election. And the people who decide the election, I think one of the mistakes my party has made is we think it's all about moderation. You appeal to them by being moderate. I just think that's nonsense in today's world. It's not the way people think. Well, maybe. But I'm just telling you, language is not going to control the presidential election. It may control other things. It will not control the presidential election.
I know it's difficult.
Because one last thing, because what people do is they watch these two candidates, and then they decide, in the last election, is that a guy that I want to be my president? Do I trust him? Do I believe they have character? Do I believe they have integrity? Do I think they're strong enough to lead? And I think that's the basis on which the decision is made. Now, I can't honestly say that it's not impacted on the edges by the language that's used by the candidates. But I don't think that I think the language thing drives national substantive debates, if that makes sense, as opposed to a presidential election, like the national debate about net neutrality or the national debate about abortion. When the Republicans named partial birth abortion, it was over. I mean, it was over. So language on the debates about these substantive issues really is important. It does matter. And I know a lot of energy is spent on that. I think presidential elections are different than that.
I know it's